Welcome back to Reddit Tales by Uncle Sammy. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth, let's get into it. If a doctor lowers his voice in a room where everyone else is pretending to be calm, listen to that change. In this story, the warning was not really about a scan. It was about what happens when somebody starts managing your reactions instead of telling you the truth. A practical lesson you can use. When the facts matter, do not argue feelings first. Slow down, write down dates, check records, and make decisions from what can be verified, not from who sounds the most convincing in the moment. My name is Darius Cole, and the day a doctor looked at my wife's ultrasound and whispered, "Leave this hospital and divorce her," I was still wearing my work jacket from the city bus garage, sleeves smudged with grease and rainwater. I had come straight from the depot in Detroit, thinking I would hear a heartbeat, hold my wife's hand, and maybe finally let myself believe our family was growing. Instead, I stood in a dim exam room with a paper bracelet on my wrist and felt my life split clean down the middle without anybody raising their voice. I was 38 then, maintenance supervisor for the municipal bus fleet on the east side, the man everybody called when a route went down before dawn and dispatch started panicking. I liked systems. I liked checklists. I liked things that made noise before they broke. My wife, Zarina, used to laugh and say I treated people like engines. You think if you listen long enough, everybody tells you what part is failing. She said it with a smile, usually while piping flowers onto a cake in our kitchen, and I took it as a tease. I hear the truth in it now. If you're already catching that something feels off in this marriage, stay with me, because the moment the doctor sees that ultrasound, everything changes. And if you like real relationship stories with twists, consequences, and truth coming out piece by piece, make sure you like, share, and subscribe right now so you don't miss the next one. We lived in a narrow brick house near Bagley, on a block where the porches leaned a little, and everybody knew which dog belonged to which yard by the sound of the bark. Zarina ran a custom cake business from home. Wedding cakes, baby showers, retirement parties, church anniversaries, all of it. She could make buttercream roses look like satin and spend an hour matching colors because dusty blue and powder blue were apparently not the same thing. We had been married 11 years. We had loved hard, lost twice, stayed quiet about it, and kept moving like most grown people do. We did not have children together. But my sister's son, Isaiah, had become ours in every way that mattered. My sister Keisha had her own storms, and after a rough stretch, what started as weekends turned into school years, and then into me signing report cards and Zarina arguing with him about drum practice in the house. Isaiah called me Uncle D in public, and Dad by accident when he was tired. Zarina had once braided his hair for school spirit day because he lost a bet and had to wear beads. Those are the memories that complicated everything later. Looking back, the warning signs were not dramatic. They were small and tidy. The kind a working man talks himself out of because he does not want trouble at home after dealing with trouble everywhere else. Zarina put a lock on the spare bedroom where she moved all her baking supplies, saying clients sometimes picked up orders and she needed inventory secure. She started taking vendor calls on the porch, then in the car. She asked for cash more often and said some decorators gave discounts if she paid the same day. She changed the password on our shared grocery app and laughed when I asked why. The first moment that stayed with me happened at a fish fry fundraiser at New Hope Baptist in late May. It was one of those sticky Detroit evenings where your shirt clings to your back before sunset and the fellowship hall smells like grease, lemon cleaner, and hot sauce. Zarina was helping plate catfish and collard greens, smiling at church ladies and complimenting hats. I was hauling coolers from my truck and keeping Isaiah from raiding the peach cobbler too early. Every time I looked over at Zarina, though, she was glancing at her phone with this private little smile, then hiding it the second she saw me. At one point she stepped outside for air, and I watched the fellowship hall clock while refilling ice because something in me had started measuring things. 12 minutes. Exactly 12. When she came back in, she smelled like the outside heat and the vanilla perfume she only wore to weddings. "Everything good?" I asked, handing her a fresh pair of gloves. "Fine," she said too quickly. Bride emergency. She wants to change her cupcake order again. I nodded, but a bride's emergency usually sounds frantic. This looked like a woman trying not to smile at a text she should not have gotten. I did not push it that night. That was one of the first choices I made that could have gone differently. I could have asked for details right there in the church kitchen while she was balancing styrofoam trays and keeping up appearances. I could have checked her face while she made up names. Instead, I chose peace because my mother was there, Isaiah was there, and I did not want to turn a fundraiser into a scene. Men tell themselves that choosing the right moment is maturity. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is just fear wearing church clothes. My mother noticed anyway. She notices everything and comments on almost nothing, which is why I pay attention when she does. My mama retired from Henry Ford after 32 years, and she is the kind of calm that makes loud people lower their voices. As she cut caramel cake in the church kitchen, she leaned toward me and said, "Son, is Zarina all right?" I shrugged. Busy. My mother did not look convinced. Busy is one thing, she said. That girl looks braced. Then she handed me a plate and went back to slicing cake like she had not just dropped a stone in my stomach. A week later, I was at Reggie's barbershop in Livernois, getting lined up before my cousin's graduation party. The shop was full of the usual noise. Clippers buzzing. Sports radio arguing with itself. Somebody laughing too loud in the waiting chairs. Curtis, who drove paratransit and knew half the city by sight, said from the corner, "Darius, I might have seen your wife downtown Thursday by the Riverfront Marriott. White SUV, right?" I laughed and said half the city had a white SUV. Curtis shrugged. "Maybe. She looked dressed up. Though, mid-afternoon." Reggie caught my eyes in the mirror and kept cutting. Again, I did not ask Serena about it. I told myself Kate clients rented ballroom space, and hotels were normal for her business. I told myself Curtis could have mistaken somebody else. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Denial, I learned, does not sound like denial when you're inside it. It sounds like patience. It sounds like trust. It sounds like I am not going to accuse my wife because a man in a barbershop saw a woman near a hotel. But later that night, I noticed Zarina put her phone under her pillow when we went to bed, and my chest tightened anyway. Zarina was beautiful in a careful, edited way. Not flashy, not loud, just exact. Pressed shirts, tiny gold hoops, gloss instead of lipstick most days. She could stand in our kitchen at 6 a.m. and still look like she had a plan for the whole room. She also hated feeling inspected. If I opened mail with her name on it, she'd get sharp. If I asked too many questions about orders, she'd say I was managing her. I used to respect that independence because I grew up around women who carried everything. Somewhere along the way, I started confusing privacy with secrecy. In June, Zarina told me she was pregnant. She said it in our kitchen while I was on my knees fixing the loose cabinet hinge under the sink, one hand on a screwdriver, the other holding the cabinet door so it would line up. "Darius," she said, and her voice went soft in a way I had not heard in months. I took 2 tests. I stood too fast and cracked the back of my hand on the counter edge. She laughed, then cried, then laughed again, and I hugged her because my body moved before my brain did. We had wanted that news for years. 2 miscarriages had changed the way we wanted things. We stopped planning and started speaking in careful phrases like, "if it happens," and "let's not get ahead of ourselves." So when Zarina put my hand on her flat stomach and cried into my shoulder, I wanted to believe every strange thing from the past few months had been anxiety, grief, hormones, fear. I wanted a clean explanation. Then the dates started tapping in my head. We had not been close much lately. There had been distance, excuses, late nights, headaches, and a lot of turnbacks. She must have seen the shift in my face because she moved quickly. "I tracked everything," she said. "The timing works. I know you're going to start doing math in your head." That word track bothered me right away. Zarina was organized, but she never tracked anything unless she was trying to win an argument. "Urgent care said around 9 weeks, she added. "I already made an appointment at St. Agnes to confirm." I nodded and told her I would take off work to go with her. She hesitated for half a second, then smiled and said that would be nice. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while the box fan clicked in the window, and Zarina moved around downstairs cleaning things that were already clean. I had another choice then. I could ask direct questions while we were alone and force conversation before she had time to rehearse more. Or I could wait and let the doctor be the first neutral voice in the room. I chose to wait because I knew my temper, and because if I asked and she lied smoothly, I might talk myself into accepting it. Facts are easier to hold than feelings when your hands are shaking. The morning of the appointment was hot enough to make the steering wheel tacky. I took the day off in the depot, drove us to St. Agnes, and listened to Zarina chatter about traffic, nursery colors, and a client who wanted sage green, but not too green. She talked the way people talk when silence feels dangerous. In the parking garage elevator, she kept touching the little gold cross at her neck and swallowing hard. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Just nervous. It's been a long road getting here." Dr. Lionel Brooks had known my family forever. He worked with my mother years ago and later became one of the most respected maternal-fetal specialists in the city. Gray at the temples, peppermint breath, neat handwriting, no fake warmth. He shook our hands, looked over Zarina's intake notes, and congratulated us. But when he looked at me, his expression did that subtle doctor shift, that tiny pause where professional tone takes over. I notice it because I spend my life reading mechanics when they say a bus is probably fine. "Let's get imaging first," he said. "Then we'll talk through the next steps." The ultrasound room was dim and cold. Zarina lay back on the table and joked about the gel being colder than church basements in January. I stood at her shoulder and held her hand. Dr. Brooks moved the wand, watched the monitor, clicked measurements, typed, then stopped typing. He adjusted angle, measured again, zoomed in. His jaw tightened in a way I would not have noticed if I wasn't already bracing. "Baby looks active," he said finally. "Strong heartbeat." Zarina exhaled and squeezed my hand so hard her nails dug in. "How far?" she asked. Dr. Brooks did not answer right away. He printed images, set them face down, and said he wanted to review one thing before finalizing dates. Then he looked directly at me. "Mr. Cole, can I speak with you outside for a moment?" His tone changed on my name. No warmth. "Just wait." Zarina sat up a little. "Everything okay?" Dr. Brooks gave a small professional smile. "I just want to confirm some history." I followed him into a narrow consultation room with a rattling window unit and a desk covered in folders. He closed the door behind us and stayed standing, which told me whatever he had to say was not routine. "Darius," he said, low and steady, "I need you to hear me before you react." My mouth went dry instantly. The ultrasound measurements placed his pregnancy at just under 12 weeks. I stared at him, waiting for a correction, some softer number, a margin of error, maybe. He shook his head once. "The dating does not last for 9 weeks. My ears started ringing. I told him we had losses before. I told him maybe my growth was irregular. I told him anything my brain could grab. He listened, then said, "The margin for error does not close that gap." I asked a question I already knew the answer to. "You sure?" He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose like he hated what came next. Then he leaned in and whispered, "Leave this hospital and divorce her." I just stood there, staring. He kept his voice low. "Do not confront her here. Do not let her turn this into confusion. Protect your finances today. Protect your peace today. If I am wrong, testing will prove it. If I am right, and she is lying, every hour you spend arguing in circles costs you more." He put a hand on my shoulder just for a second. "I've seen this before," he said. "Not the same details, but the same pattern. The lies get larger when they are challenged. You look like a man who will try to fix what is already broken. You can't fix deception by standing closer to it." I nodded because I could not trust my voice. He handed me a tissue, and I realized my eyes had watered without me noticing. Then he straightened up, put his glasses back on, and opened the door like the conversation never happened. Zarina was sitting up, smoothing her sweater and watching our faces. "What did he say?" she asked, trying to read us both at once. Dr. Brooks handed her a stack of lab papers and spoke in that neutral clinic tone. "We'll do standard blood work and schedule follow-up imaging. The front desk will help with vitamins and dates." He did not repeat the estimate in front of me. That was mercy. I drove us home with both hands locked on the wheel, while Zarina talked too brightly about maybe telling my mother that weekend. Every word landed like static in my ears. In the driveway, she touched my arm before I could get out. "You've been quiet all day." I kept my eyes on the garage door. "How far did urgent care say again?" I asked. "Around 9 weeks," she said. "Maybe 10. "Why?" Dr. Brooks said almost 12. She gave a small laugh I had heard before, the one she used when trying to minimize something fast. "Those estimates can move." I turned and looked straight at her. He didn't sound uncertain. Her face tightened, then softened on command. "Darius, please don't do this. Not after what we've been through." That sentence told me everything because it skipped facts and went straight to guilt. I got out, went inside, grabbed my work tablet and the folder where I kept our mortgage documents, and told her I needed to check a problem at the depot. She followed me into the kitchen, voice rising. "You are spiraling. Stress isn't good for the baby." The baby. Her tone made the word sound like a shield she could hide behind. I left anyway, in the truck. I sat for a full minute in our driveway and watched the porch light flicker on in broad daylight, because the sense was failing. I drove to Belle because I could not think on my own block. Families were out by the water. A boy in a tiger's cap was learning to ride a bike, while his grandmother clapped every time he wobbled 3 feet farther. It looked like every normal day in summer, and that made me angrier than I expected. I called my mother first. She answered on the second ring and said, "What happened?" before I said hello. I told her enough to hear it out loud. She was silent for a moment, then said, "Come over later. Do not go home hot." The second call was to Malik, my friend since Cast Tech shop class and now an accountant with a small office near Easter Market. Malik does not panic. Even in college, he sounded like he was reviewing a spreadsheet while everybody else was shouting. I told him the dates, the doctor, the feeling in my gut. He listened and then said, "Open a separate account today. Move your direct deposit. Screenshot every shared account. Do not hide money. Document money. Big difference." Within 5 minutes, he texted me a list: bank statements, credit cards, tax returns, insurance, titles, passwords, account access logs. At the depot that afternoon, I shut my office door while mechanics shouted over impact wrenches and buses hissed in and out of service bays. Rain started hitting the metal roof, so hard the whole building sounded like a drum line. I logged into our joint bank account and saw transfers I had never noticed because they were spaced out and labeled like routine business expenses. 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, then 8. Recipients I did not recognize. One recurrent account tied to something called Larkwell Events LLC. My hands went cold. That money should have been sitting in savings and Isaiah's school fund. I need be fair to myself here, because shame likes to rewrite history. Zarina handled household finances because she was good at details and because after our losses, I let her control anything that made her feel steady. I trusted her with that. Trust was not stupidity. But the truth is, I stopped checking because checking felt like suspicion, and I wanted to be the kind of husband who was not suspicious. That evening at my mother's kitchen table, while she served me pot roast and green beans I barely tasted, she said, "Do not protect her from consequences just because you still remember her good years." What if I'm wrong? I asked, what if I blow up everything over dates and a feeling? My mother folded her napkin and looked at me the way she used to when I tried to fix a car problem by kicking the tire. "Then facts will save it," she said. "But right now, you are trying to save the picture, not the truth." She leaned back in her chair. "Pictures can't hold you up, son." I finished eating, thanked her, and drove straight to Malik's office instead of home. That was the second big choice. I chose records over another night of pretending. Malik stayed with me until almost 10. helping me download statements, flag transfers, and sort what belonged to household bills versus what looked off. The list grew uglier the longer we looked. Charges at hotels on Thursdays. Restaurant tabs downtown during hours. Zarina claimed she had consultations. Payments to a car service she never mentioned. This isn't random, Malik said quietly, sliding another printed page into the pile. This is a second life with receipts. I sat there staring at the paper and felt something harden in me. Not rage. Clarity. Rage is loud. Clarity is cold and organized. The next morning, Zarina was gentle in a way that used to work on me every time. She made grits with too much pepper and cheddar, the way I like, and stood at the stove in my old college t-shirt, as if she had not spent the last 6 months guarding her phone like state secrets. I know yesterday was scary, she said softly. It probably brought up old stuff for you. Old stuff. We both knew she meant the miscarriages. It was a skill of hers, taking a real wound and setting it in front of me to block a harder conversation. We should get another scan, she continued. Somewhere else. Just to calm your mind. Dr. Brooks is older, maybe he was rushed. Calm your mind, not clarify the facts. I watched her pour coffee and realized she still was not asking what he told me exactly. She was building a path around it. Fine, I said. Book wherever you want. She brightened too fast. There's a boutique place in Troy one of my clients loves. They do really detailed scans. Boutique. I nodded and went to work, then left early to stop by the county clerk's office instead. The records clerk knew me because our fleet paperwork came through there all the time. I asked about Larkwell Events LLC, and she printed a filing summary after a few clicks. Registered agent, Zarina Cole. Co-owner, Devin Pike. My stomach dropped before my brain fully caught up. I knew Devin Pike. Everybody around our side of the city knew him. Event promoter, deal maker, consultant. Always photographed at rooftop parties in suits that looked rented. He had been to our house twice for corporate cake consultations. Zarina said he brought high-paying clients. I remembered hating how comfortable he was in my kitchen. Devin was the type of man who complimented your home like he was appraising it for himself. 2 White Smile expensive sneakers, cologne you smelled after he left. He called everybody family after meeting them once. I sat in my truck outside the clerk's office staring at that filing summary and finally laughed once. Sharp and ugly. The pregnancy lie was betrayal. This was planned. She had built a company with him, in secret, using our money. I called Malik and read the name. He exhaled slowly. You need a lawyer today, he said. Not tomorrow. Today. Felicia Boone's office was above a pharmacy on Grand River, and the stairwell always smelled like cough syrup and old radiator heat. She was in her 40s, sharp suits, short natural hair, and a voice that made people stop performing. I had seen her in action once at a custody hearing for one of our drivers, and I remembered how she let the other side talk themselves into trouble. I brought her the bank records, the LLC filing, and a written timeline. She skimmed, asked 6 precise questions, and then sat back. First, she said, we stopped the financial bleeding. I told her what Dr. Brooks had whispered. She did not blink. Good doctor, she said, and good advice. Then she pointed her pen at me. You will be tempted to confront her tonight with all this. Don't. Get copies of tax returns, insurance policies, deed records, retirement statements, and any account info still in the house before she knows you are organized. You can confront later. Right now, your job is documentation. I asked if I should move out. Only if you fear for safety, she said. Otherwise, stay calm, stay visible, and let me file first. That evening I came home to the smell of vanilla and lemon zest. Zarina was in the spare room frosting a 3-tier cake with tiny buttercream magnolias, radio low, window fan humming. She looked over her shoulder and smiled like we were in an ordinary marriage. I booked the boutique ultrasound for Friday, she said. After lunch. I leaned in the doorway and said, Who is Devin Pike to you? Her hand stopped midair with the piping bag. Just 1 second. Then she kept squeezing petals. A client, she said without looking at me. He co-owns a company with you, I said. She turned slowly. icing spatula in one hand, irritation already on her face. You went through my filings? Our money is in that account. It's a venture, she snapped. I was going to tell you once it's stabilized. When? I asked. After more transfers? After a contract? After baby? She set the spatula down hard. You always do this, Darius. You interrogate before you understand. There was my flaw. Use as cover. I can be blunt. I can be controlling when I get scared. She knew exactly where to press. Are you sleeping with him? I asked. She closed her eyes like I had insulted her family. No, I am not doing this with you. The baby dates don't match, Serena. According to one doctor, she shot back. A doctor who probably measured wrong and filled your head with nonsense. I am pregnant. I am scared. And you are acting like an auditor. She crossed her arms over her apron and stared me down. If you are calling my child a lie, then we have nothing to talk about tonight. I went upstairs, copied every document I could find, and slept on the couch fully dressed. Friday's boutique Ultrasound was exactly the kind of place people go to buy reassurance. Lavender walls, fake candles, soft music, a receptionist with a voice like she was narrating a spa commercial. The technician was not a doctor, but she was cheerful and vague in ways that gave Serena room to breathe. She called the baby Peanut, asked if we wanted a heartbeat recording inside a stuffed bear, and gave a loose estimate that still did not fit Serena's story. Serena held on to that vagueness anyway. In the parking lot, she said, "See? Different places say different things." I looked at her in the hot strip mall sunlight and felt the last of my hesitation burn off. I met with a lawyer, I said. Her face changed in layers, shock, then anger, then calculation. You did what? I met with a lawyer. For what? She asked, and for one wild second I almost admired the commitment to the performance. For divorce, I said. She got in the car and shut the door so hard the mirrors shook. She did not say another word the whole drive home, but I could see her jaw moving. She was planning, not grieving. The next week the house became a theater. Serena made my favorite dinners, sent me photos of baby socks, and asked if I thought the guest room should stay gray. She cried once in the laundry room where she knew I would find her. I answered politely and kept every conversation in text whenever possible, just like Felicia advised. Meanwhile, Malik traced more transfers. Larkwell Events was not paying bakers or decorators. It was paying a downtown apartment lease, clothing stores, and wire transfers to D. Pike Enterprises. Same man, different account name. The deeper we looked, the less this resembled a side business. I got final proof of the affair the old-fashioned way. No trackers, no spyware, just timing and eyes. On Thursday, I was told Serena Dispatch had a late emergency, and I might be at the depot until midnight. I parked my truck there, borrowed Malik's sedan, and sat across from a business hotel near Corktown with a coffee that went cold in my hand. At 2:17 p.m., Serena's white SUV pulled in. At 2:24, Devin's black Range Rover arrived. He kissed her before they reached the lobby. Not tentative. Familiar. They did not even look around. I did not rush in. That matters. I wanted to. Every part of me wanted to walk through those glass doors and blow up every lie in public. But I could hear Felicia in my head. Composure is strategy. I took 3 time-stamped photos, wrote down the room number from the front desk reflection in a lobby mirror, and drove straight to Felicia's office. She looked at the pictures, then looked at me. You all right? She asked. No, I said. Good, she replied. Be not all right here. Be calm everywhere else. Then she filed emergency motions before I left. Around that same time, I had to talk to Isaiah. He was 14, all elbows and long legs, always tapping drum patterns on tables and door frames. He had started watching us the way kids watch weather. One evening we sat on the porch while buses sighed to stop at the corner, and rainwater dripped from the maple leaves. Uncle D, he said, you and Z are splitting up, right? I started to say grown-up stuff, then stopped. He deserved better than fog. Yeah, I said, looks like we are. He stared at the street and nodded once. Because of another man, he asked. I looked over. How do you know that? He shrugged without looking at me. She smiles at her phone, then gets mean for no reason. And she missed my spring concert because of a cake emergency, but I saw the hotel charge email on the printer the next day. My chest hurt hearing that. Children see more than adults think, and they carry what they see quietly. None of this is your fault, I said. He nodded. I know. I'm staying with you, though. It was not a question. It was a line he had already drawn inside himself. When Felicia told me the papers were ready, she said, pick neutral ground to serve her. Not your house. Not the hospital. Not somewhere she can make a scene and then call herself the victim. I chose a diner on West Grand where Zarina and I used to eat lemon rice soup after late cake deliveries. The waitress still called us you two like we were 25. Zarina came in wearing a tan trench and cherry lipstick, hair wrapped smooth, looking like she was headed to a business meeting. That told me she expected negotiation, not truth. Before I could speak, she leaned in and started. I know you're hurt. I know you're scared. But filing for divorce while I'm pregnant is cruel, Darius. We can do counseling. We can fix this if you stop trying to punish me. Her voice was low, controlled, almost convincing if I did not already know what was in the bank records. I slid the folder across the table. I'm not punishing you. I said, I'm ending a fraud. She opened it, saw the petition and financial exhibits, and went still in a way I had never seen before. You filed with affidavits, she said quietly. You really did this. Yes. You put me in court while I'm carrying your child. I held her gaze and let the words sit there. Do not do that, I said. Not anymore. Her eyes sharpened. The tears she had prepared did not come. You think you can humiliate me and walk away clean? She asked. I think I can stop funding lies, I said. She laughed once, no humor in it. You do not understand what you're touching. Devin has investors, contracts, people waiting on money. I almost missed what she had given away because she said it like a threat. People? I repeated. She looked at the window, then back at me. Just let me handle it. Sign the LLC over and stay out of it. We can work out the rest privately. That was the first fully honest thing she had said in weeks. She was deeper than a affair and scared of what would happen if I pulled away. I stood up and left cash under my untouched coffee. My lawyer will call yours. She grabbed my wrist before I could step away. Listen to me, she hissed, voice low and urgent. Devin is not somebody you embarrass. I gently removed her hand and looked at her, really looked at her. This was not a woman protecting a marriage. This was a woman trying to contain a collapse. Then you should not have tied him to my household, I said. Outside in my truck, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear in my ears. I called Felicia from the parking lot and repeated Zarina's exact words. Felicia got quiet. Do not meet anyone alone, she said. Document every contact. Devin called that night from an unknown number while I was tightening a loose shelf bracket at my mother's house just to keep my hands busy. Smooth voice, easy tone. Mr. Cole, man to man, this divorce filing is bad for business. Zarina's emotional. You're emotional. Let's be adults. I put the phone on speaker and recorded from a second phone like Felicia instructed. There is no business with me, I said. He chuckled. Everybody is business. You freezing money creates problems for a lot of people. Then they should call you, I said, and ended the call. The next morning, more calls started. Vendors, clients, one woman crying because she had paid a deposit for a graduation banquet and no venue was booked. Another man was angry about a baby shower package that did not exist. Larkwell Events was not just an affair front. It was an event scam, collecting deposits and moving money around. I felt sick because some of those names were from our church network, people who trusted Zarina because she stood in my kitchen and prayed over food. Felicia moved fast, filing a protective order and connected me to a detective in financial crimes who already knew Devin Pike's name. 3 weeks later, Zarina texted me from St. Agnes. Please come. BP scare. I'm alone. I stared at the message for a long minute. I could have ignored it. Legally, emotionally, morally, nobody would have blamed me. But I thought about the kind of man I wanted Isaiah watching me be, and I thought about what Dr. Brooks had really warned me against. Deception, not compassion. So I went, not as a husband, not as a rescuer, just as someone who once built a life with her and could still sit in a room without pretending the past had not changed. Zarina looked smaller in that hospital bed than I had ever seen her. No makeup, hair wrapped, blood pressure cuff inflating every 15 minutes, eyes swollen from crying or no sleep. She did not perform when I walked in. She just stared at the blanket and said, "He left." "Devin?" I asked. She nodded. When the accounts froze and detectives called, he disappeared, changed numbers, cleared the apartment, took what he could. She laughed once, brittle and embarrassed. I know how that sounds. I stood by the window and watched rain streak the parking garage glass. "It sounds accurate," I said. She covered her face and cried then, real crying this time, not the careful kind. "I did not mean for it to go this far," she whispered. That sentence made me angrier than if she had lied again, because meaning was never the issue. She had made choices one by one, and called each one temporary. Dr. Brooks came in, checked her chart, and nodded at me but said nothing personal. As he left, Zarina asked without looking up, "Did he tell you to leave me that day?" I answered yes. After a long silence, she said, "He was right." The divorce moved through fall into winter, slow and expensive and exhausting. Detroit got that wet gray cold that makes every block look tired and every coat feel too thin. I moved out and rented a place closer to the depot. Isaiah stayed with me full time, and a judge later formalized the arrangement after hearing from Keisha and Isaiah himself. Zarina sold baking equipment to pay civil settlements from the event scam. Devin was arrested in Cleveland the following spring on fraud charges tied to multiple counties. Paternity testing after the baby's birth confirmed what we already knew. The child was not mine. Zarina named him Miles. I sent a diaper gift card to my mother and no note because the baby did not choose any of this. Months later, I saw Zarina outside the family court after hearing about support from Devin, who was making promises from jail through his lawyer. She looked older, not because of age, but because of consequence. She asked about Isaiah's drumline finals. I told her he was made section leader. She smiled proud and sad at the same time and said, "You were kind in the hospital when you didn't have to be." I told her kindness is not the same thing as staying. When people tell these stories, they usually focus on betrayal because it is the loudest part. But the part that matters more is what comes after the shock. In this story, the turning points were not dramatic speeches. They were quiet decisions. Sitting in Malik's office instead of arguing at home, taking photos instead of making a scene, calling a lawyer before calling cousins, and showing up at the hospital without reopening the marriage. Boundaries do not make you cold. They keep you from becoming somebody else's chaos. Clarity saved Darius long before the court did. If this story stayed with you, that's because it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about boundaries, restraint, and what it takes to walk away with your dignity. If you want more stories like this with real emotion, layered characters, and endings that mean something, please share and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what was the exact moment you knew Zarina was lying? The end.